In this video, I aim to answer the question, what is the better looking game, Battlefield 1 or Battlefield 5? We're going to have a graphics comparison, taking a look at the main game in BF1 and then the full release of Battlefield 5 as well. In the past, I have done comparisons, taking a look at the two games, however, this was using the alpha as a comparison in Battlefield 5, which isn't strictly fair as it's not the full game and you only get access to one map. This video is going to be far more inclusive of everything Battlefield 5 has to offer because of course you want to be comparing the same sort of map together, and in Battlefield 5 you do of course have a load of different maps. Not only do you have the epic looking snow maps, you also have maps in urban environments and then of course the maps in the more outdoor green settings with fields such as Twisted Steel. The game is of course on the same engine as Battlefield 1. Battlefield 5 was built on Frostbite 3, this has been used for Battlefield 4 as well, but the game does look a lot different to BF4, BF1 did as well, so I'm going to compare it to BF1. I feel as if that's the fairest thing to compare it to, and of course the gameplay in the background has been captured in the last couple of days, so the game may change over time as well. I don't think they'll change the graphics that much, but there might be a few things that they decide to switch up. Personally, from the start, I would say that it's really difficult to say which one I prefer. With a bit more tweaking, Battlefield 5 would be the better looking game, but right now BF1 might just have the edge. Battlefield 5 does have some epic things about it though. I feel as if some of the environments are quite similar to BF1, but just have that different feeling about them. If you take a look in the background now, you've got Fiel 652, I believe it's called. I don't know, that map does look fairly similar to the snow maps in BF1, but just has its own twist to it, and I do kinda like it. I also feel as if BF5 on some maps, in some situations, does look a lot more realistic, but then in other situations it does look a bit stylized and oversaturated. You'll have to let me know what you think. I know it's a personal preference a lot of the time. The one thing I would say about BF1 is that it looked very gritty on some maps. The mud was everywhere and that was a massive feature in the First World War. In World War II things were similar in that regard, however you did have more environments as it was more of a world war. Far more places were in conflict. That doesn't mean that the game should look any more realistic, it just means you might have more environments to be fighting in. For the most part, Battlefield 5 is fairly similar to BF1 with the environments you do fight in. We're missing that close quarters, completely urban warfare as we saw with Fort de Vaux. However, that was a DLC map and we may see a map similar to that released. Afterwards, we do have Devastation of Rotterdam, but that isn't all indoors, which is what I was kind of getting at. I would say that Battlefield 1 sold really well, and one of the main reasons for that was the fact that it did give you a peek into World War I and how we perceive World War I to have been, and it was incredibly realistic for the most part. It's a video game, you can't be that realistic, but if you're taking it as a video game, it was one of the most realistic representations of that First World War. Battlefield 5 isn't as close for World War II in my opinion. I feel as if the gameplay is a little bit like some of the older Call of Duties we've seen. I'm not too annoyed with it, I think the game plays fairly well. It has bugs, yes, these will be patched out for sure. I'm really enjoying it, but this isn't a review of the game, this is more just an objective look at the graphics and then my opinion on top of that with what I prefer. Now, looking at the previous video I made, someone commented saying Battlefield 1 had better lighting, more realistic colours and a better overall atmosphere. Battlefield 5 has the same graphical style as Bad Company 2, I guess in an attempt to capture more attention in a subtle way. In my opinion, I don't think that makes Battlefield 5 a bad looking game. What I do think though is it makes it a different style of game. I don't think DICE are really going for that super realistic gritty game. As you can see in the background, the Battlefield 1 setting on Amiens was really atmospheric, and whether you enjoyed the explosions and gas and fire and all that other stuff you can see or not, it definitely was pretty epic to play in. On Battlefield 5, as you can see I drop in here on Twisted Steel, it does look really good. I think it's slightly more of a realistic looking game, but it is very vibrant. And I feel as if they toned some of this down and maybe thought about the colour palette just a little bit more, made it a bit more like BF1, people would prefer it. The greens are very green, the reds are very red. If you're taking a photograph of this sort of stuff, you could definitely change it, and I could even change some of this in the settings or whilst editing and make it look a bit more realistic, but I've tried to keep it as equal to the game as possible just for this video. The environmental effects do look a little bit better on Battlefield 5 on certain maps, but on others they just look a bit too much in your face. Narvik was really bad in the beta for this. The snow was everywhere and was inside all of the buildings. They have toned it down a bit, but in Battlefield 1 you did have a similar problem. As you can see on Amiens, the fog does get everywhere, and it's not really a very realistic representation of fog. It doesn't really do that in real life, but again, that's your own preference. Whether you prefer it or not is up to you. A couple of things I really hate in Battlefield 5 right now. It's all really blurry for the most part. Anti-aliasing is forced on and you cannot turn it off. In other games, other previous Battlefields, you could turn it off and make the game look a little more crisp if you wanted to. The vehicles, I haven't really compared them that much, but I think that Battlefield 5 has a better setting for vehicles. The tanks are more interesting, the planes are more interesting, and therefore it's probably a little easier to make the things look more interesting as well. The planes have a couple of extra little bits added on from Battlefield 1. You can see the plane start to break up. We had it in BF1, but then of course you get the trail of flames and smoke behind it. I think it looks absolutely awesome. And when tanks explode, they also have a couple more animations in Battlefield 5. The turrets can also fly off and roll away, or fall down a hill, or whatever it is. It depends where you really took all the damage and exploded. When it comes to the campaign, I think they both look quite similar. They both look absolutely awesome. The campaign is kind of where the game shines in terms of the visuals, because DICE get all that time to put together the scenes that you would see. You can crank up the settings. You only need 60 FPS in a campaign, if that, and you can just take it all in and enjoy it. Some people bashed me in my review video saying that the campaign for Battlefield 5 wasn't that good. That's a personal preference, I think, because I really did enjoy it. There were some of the story things that I was like, I'm not too sure about that. It doesn't really make too much sense, or it's not really for me. But I play a campaign for the visuals and the audio, and it was fantastic in Battlefield 1, and it was fantastic in Battlefield 5. I don't buy Battlefield for the campaign, it's just a bit of an add-on, and it's a nice surprise when it's really quite entertaining to play. I only ever play it once, and then I'm done with it. So that's my review of the graphics in Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 1. This map at the end, Hamada, I think is an awesome looking map. It's a slightly different setting to what we've experienced before. We've had desert maps and things like that, but that one was slightly more interesting to look at. And this one on BF1, Fort de Vaux, we will almost certainly get a map similar to this in Battlefield 5. Think of Operation Metro in BF3, Operation Metro and Operation Locker in BF4, and then Fort de Vaux in BF1. There'll be something similar in Battlefield 5, I can almost guarantee it. Anyway, if you've got any comments you want to leave at the bottom of this video, do so. Let me know what you think of the two games, which one looks better. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.